In the Arizona dust of 1878, a woman's heart became a battlefield. Her name was Lorena Bishop, and she was promised to a man who ruled his town with an iron fist. But her soul already belonged to an Apache warrior, the heir to a hunted people. This isn't just a story of a love triangle. It's the story of a reckoning where a single vow would light a fire that could burn the whole territory to the ground. The sun was a hammer over the canyons, but for Lena Bishop, the heat was just the price of freedom. Freedom from her father's failing ranch. Freedom from the worry etched into his face. Her horse, Dust Devil, knew the path by heart. It was a secret path, leading to a hidden spring, a sliver of impossible green in a world of red rock and dust. She didn't have to wait long. He didn't make a sound. One moment there were only shadows under the cottonwood trees, and the next the shadows had formed into the shape of a man. In her world, his name was Kyle. To his own people, the Chiricahua Apache, he was Taza, son of a great chief. His eyes held a softness that was only for her. "You came," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Did you doubt I would?" Lena smiled, her heart giving a powerful leap. She walked toward him, and he took her hands. His touch was warm and real. "My world is shrinking," she confessed, the smile fading. "The drought, it's taken almost everything. My father just sits on the porch all day, watching the dust blow." Kyle's face hardened. He knew about loss. He knew about watching a way of life wither under a hostile sky. For his people, it wasn't just the sun that was the enemy. It was the tide of settlers, miners, and soldiers flooding their lands. "The Bishop Ranch has good water," Kyle said. "The deep well never runs dry. That is powerful medicine in this land." "It's also a curse," Lena said bitterly. "It's the only thing of value we have left, and powerful men want it." They talked for hours, a fragile bridge between their two colliding worlds. As the sun began to bleed across the canyon walls, Kyle grew serious. He reached into a leather pouch and pulled out a small, carved wooden bird. "My father made this for my mother," he said, pressing it into her palm. "It is a sign of intent. It says, 'My heart has chosen its home.'" Lena's breath caught. The wood was warm against her skin, more precious than any jewel. It was a promise, a future. "You do not have to answer now," he said gently, "but know what it means." Tears welled in her eyes. She clutched the tiny bird. "Yes," she whispered. "My heart has chosen its home too." The ride back to the ranch should have been triumphant. Hope was a dangerous, soaring thing inside her chest. But as she crested the final rise and saw the homestead below, that hope turned to ice. A sleek black buggy was hitched near the porch. It was an omen, as stark and unwelcome as a vulture circling overhead. It belonged to one man, Sheriff Gideon Cole of the nearby town of Redemption. She found him in the parlor with her father, Franklin. The room felt airless, crushed by the sheriff's presence. Cole was a man of hard lines and sharp angles, from his tailored black coat to his clean-shaven jaw. His eyes, the color of a winter sky, missed nothing. "Lorena," her father said, his voice thin and strained. He couldn't meet her gaze. "The sheriff, he has an offer." Sheriff Cole rose, his movements unnervingly smooth. "Miss Bishop, your father finds himself in a precarious financial position. The bank in Tucson holds the note on this ranch, and I, as it happens, have recently acquired that note." Lena's blood ran cold. "You bought our debt." "An investment," Cole corrected, his lips curving into a smile that held no warmth. "I believe in the future of this territory. This ranch, this town, they need stability. They need strong leadership." He stepped closer, his gaze sweeping over her like a man appraising livestock. "A partnership, you might say." "What kind of partnership?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The most binding kind," Cole said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Your father's debt is considerable. Foreclosure is inevitable. However, I am prepared to forgive the entire sum, to tear up the note." "In exchange for what?" Franklin Bishop finally croaked, looking pleadingly at his daughter. Sheriff Cole placed his whiskey glass on the mantel with a decisive click. "In exchange for your daughter's hand in marriage." The room tilted. The carved bird in her pocket felt like a shard of ice against her skin. "You will marry me, Miss Bishop," Cole stated, not asked. You will become Mrs. Cole, the First Lady of Redemption. In doing so, you will save your father's home. It's a simple, elegant solution. It was not an offer. It was a checkmate. She looked from the sheriff's cold, triumphant face to her father's broken, defeated one. He was trapping her, using her father's love as the jaws of the cage. And she was walking right into it. The town of Redemption lived in fear of its own name. There was no redemption there, only the unbending law of Sheriff Gideon Cole. The town was his personal kingdom, and he governed it from the barrel of a gun. From the moment Lena arrived in Cole's buggy, she felt the weight of hundreds of eyes. Curious eyes, pitying eyes, but mostly blank eyes. People here knew better than to have an opinion. The sheriff's house was as imposing as its owner, a two-story monument to order and control. Inside, it was a museum of heavy dark wood in polished silver. No personal touches, just wealth on display. And she was to be the newest exhibit. This will be your home, Cole announced. You will want for nothing. Except my freedom, Lena said, her voice quiet but firm. Cole turned, his expression unreadable. Freedom is an illusion, Lena. There are only choices and consequences. You made a sensible choice. He stepped closer, his touch cold and clinical as he traced her jawline. You will learn the rules of this house. You will learn your role. You will be respected, admired, and in return, you will be loyal. Loyalty is something I value above all else. The days leading up to the wedding were a special kind of hell. Cole paraded her through town, his hand always on her back, a gesture of both possession and warning. She met the banker, Mr. Abernathy, a man who seemed to be sweating permanently, and the saloon owner, Martha O'Malley, a tough woman whose eyes saw right through the sheriff's facade. It was during one of these displays that Lena saw the real Gideon Cole. A young ranch hand, barely 18, was accused of stealing a horse. He was dragged into the street by Cole's deputy, a quiet man named Wade Garrett. The boy swore his innocence, his voice cracking with terror. Cole didn't bother with a trial. He was the judge and jury. In Redemption, we do not tolerate thieves, Cole announced to the silent crowd. I ain't no thief, Sheriff. I swear it, the boy cried. Cole drew his pistol with a liquid, terrifying speed. He didn't aim for the head or the heart. He aimed lower. The shot echoed off the buildings. The boy screamed, collapsing to the ground, clutching a shattered kneecap. He won't be riding any horse for a long time, Cole said into the stunned silence. Let that be a lesson. He turned to Lena, his eyes searching her face. Order requires a firm hand. Do you understand? Lena felt sick. She could only nod. This wasn't justice. It was theater. Brutal theater designed to maintain his absolute power. Deputy Garrett, his face pale, wouldn't meet her eyes as he hauled the whimpering boy away. That night, Lena lay awake, clutching the carved bird. Kyle seemed like a dream from another life. She was in a gilded cage, and the bars were made of her father's very survival. Her only glimmer of hope came from Martha O'Malley. While Lena was being fitted for a wedding dress that felt like a burial shroud, the saloon owner spoke in a low tone. You've got a heavy spirit for a bride-to-be, Martha said. I have a lot on my mind, Lena replied. Martha's eyes met hers in the mirror. This town has a way of putting things on a person's mind. The sheriff, he's particular, likes his things just so. His town, his laws, his wife. The emphasis was subtle but clear. Power is a funny thing, Martha continued. It can make a man feel like a king. It can also make him blind. It was a tiny crack of light in the darkness. Martha O'Malley wasn't afraid of Gideon Cole. A few days later, her chance came. Cole announced he was riding out with Deputy Garrett. They were going to investigate rumors of Apache raids near the mining camps in the Dragoon Mountains, the very direction of Kyle's people. He would be gone for 2 days. You will remain in the house, he instructed, his gaze a physical restraint. Lock the doors at night. Of course, Gideon, she replied, her voice a perfect imitation of meek compliance. The moment his buggy disappeared in a cloud of dust, a frantic, desperate plan formed in her mind. It was reckless. It was foolish. If she were caught, the consequences would be terrifying. But the thought of Kyle, of the promise in the carved bird, was a fire in her blood. She had to try. She had to ride. She waited until midday, then slipped out the back in her own riding skirt and boots. Saddling her horse felt like an act of rebellion. Every cinch pulled tight was a small victory. She rode out of town slowly, casually. Only when redemption was a hazy memory did she urge Dust Devil into a gallop, turning south toward the canyons. The oppressive air of the town gave way to the vast, indifferent silence of the desert. She reached the hidden spring as dusk began to bleed across the sky. The place was empty. A cold knot of fear tightened in her stomach. Then he was there. He appeared so suddenly she gasped. Kyle stood by the spring, his face a mask of grim fury. "They say you are to marry the man they call Sheriff," he said, his voice flat and hard. "The Iron Sheriff, the one who pays bounties for Apache scalps." "Kyle, I had no choice," she pleaded. "He holds my father's life in his hands. He bought the debt on our ranch." "There is always a choice," he countered, stepping closer. The softness was gone from his eyes, replaced by a deep, hurting anger. "You chose your father's land over the promise we made." "No!" she cried, rushing to him. "I chose my father's life. You don't know this, man. This isn't a life I've chosen. It's a prison. I came here because I would rather die than live it without you knowing the truth." Her raw anguish broke through his anger. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Forgive me," he murmured into her hair. "My fear spoke with a forked tongue. The thought of you with him, it is a fire in my blood." "He leaves for the dragoons tomorrow," she whispered urgently. "He and his deputy, they're investigating raids on the silver mines." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "There have been no raids by my people. My father has forbidden it." He grew still, a sudden cold understanding dawning on his face. "The silver mines. They are on the edge of Broken Spear Canyon, sacred ground. The prospectors who dig there are a plague, but we have not raided them." "Then who did?" Lena asked. "Perhaps no one," Kyle said slowly. "Or perhaps someone who wants it to look like my people did. Someone who wants an excuse to drive us out." He looked at her, and she saw the terrifying connection in his eyes. "This sheriff, does he profit from these mines?" "I don't know," Lena admitted. "He talks about progress, about making the town wealthy." "The land the mines are on was once part of the treaty lands," Kyle said, his voice low and dangerous. "The treaty was changed with a new map, drawn by liars. This Sheriff Cole is not just a lawman, he is a thief in a suit." A plan began to form between them, born of desperation. "I can't run," Lena said, the words tasting like ash. "If I disappear, he will destroy my father. But I can be your eyes and ears inside his house. I can listen." "It is a dangerous game," Kyle warned. "He will kill you if he discovers it." "He is already killing me slowly," she countered. "Tell me what to look for." "Maps, letters, names. Look for the name Coronado Ventures. It is the name on the miners' claim markers. Find out who owns it. Find out Cole's connection. The truth is a weapon we can use." Their time ran out as the moon rose. Their parting was urgent and passionate. He pressed the carved bird back into her hand. "Keep this," he said. "When you feel the cage around you, remember the sky is still there." The ride back was a nightmare. Every shadow held a threat. She slipped back into the sheriff's house like a ghost, her heart a wild drum against her ribs. She was just in time. An hour later, she heard horses. Peeking through the curtains, she saw Cole and Deputy Garrett riding back into town. They were a day early. A chilling realization washed over her. The trip wasn't about investigating raids. It was never about raids. It was a test for her. He had been watching her all along. Gideon Cole entered the house to find Lena in the parlor, calmly reading a book. She had washed the dust from her face and changed her clothes. Her heart was hammering, but her expression was serene. "You're back early," she said, looking up with a placid smile. "The trail went cold," Cole replied, his eyes sweeping the room, then settling on her. He was studying her, searching for any sign of deceit. "It seems the Apache are more elusive than advertised." He poured himself a whiskey, his gaze never leaving her. "Did you have a pleasant day?" "It was very quiet," she said. her voice a marvel of control. "I confess, I find redemption a little dull when you are not here." A flicker of vanity crossed his face. "I trust you followed my instructions and remained within the house." "Of course, Gideon. Where else would I go?" The lie felt slick on her tongue. He smiled, a thin, knowing curve of his lips. "Nowhere." Exactly. He knew. He didn't have to accuse her. He was a cat playing with a mouse, enjoying the game, letting her know that her cage had no holes. His early return wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. He had likely ridden just out of sight, waited, and watched. He was showing her that even her pretense of freedom was an illusion he allowed. The days that followed were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Cole was impeccably courteous. He brought her a gift, a pair of delicate silver earrings. As he fastened them, he whispered, "Silver, the metal that is building our future. A reward for those bold enough to take it." It was another deliberate probe. She thought of what Kyle had said about the mines on sacred land, about Coronado Ventures. Then he dropped the next bomb. "The circuit judge will be passing through next week. We will be married on Saturday." The walls were closing in. She had to find the proof Kyle needed. She couldn't risk ransacking his office. Instead, she used her role as the lady of the house, insisting on dusting his desk herself. His office was obsessively neat, organized, and impersonal. But she knew his secrets were in the one place she couldn't get to, a locked drawer to which only he carried the key. Her chance came out of nowhere. Deputy Garrett arrived, his face grim. A flash flood in a northern canyon. A family of homesteaders was missing. It was a real emergency, an act of God that even Cole couldn't have planned. He grabbed his coat and gun belt, his focus entirely on the crisis. In his haste, he left the small key ring on his desk. Lena's heart stopped. She waited until the sound of their horses faded. Then she moved. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the drawer. Inside were neatly filed folders. One was labeled Bishop Ranch Survey. She opened it. It wasn't just a land survey. It was a detailed geological map. A thick vein of silver, marked in red ink, ran directly beneath the land where her father's well was located. The well that never ran dry. Cole didn't just want the ranch for its water. He wanted it for the river of silver that lay sleeping beneath it. He hadn't saved her father from the bank. He had been the predator, using the bank to secure his prize. Her father's debt was just the tool he used to get the mineral rights without anyone suspecting. It was a hostile takeover disguised as a rescue. In another folder, labeled CV Holdings, she found it. Coronado Ventures. It was a partnership agreement with three names. The first was the banker, Abernathy. The second was a powerful cattle baron from Tucson named Pierce. And the third, listed as a silent partner entitled to 50% of all profits, was Gideon Cole. He wasn't just a thief. He was the king of thieves, using his badge to protect a secret mining operation on stolen Apache land. The raids were fictions he created himself, excuses to keep the army present and the Apache under suspicion, preventing them from reclaiming the very land he was plundering. She put the files back, locked the drawer, and placed the keys exactly where he had left them. She had the truth, but the truth was a loaded gun. The wedding on Saturday was no longer just a life sentence. It was a potential death sentence. She was about to marry the man actively orchestrating the destruction of Kyle's people, and she was carrying the secret that could get them all killed. The day of the wedding dawned gray and oppressive. Lena stood before the mirror. The woman in the glass had haunted eyes and a grim set to her jaw. Martha O'Malley stood behind her, adjusting the veil. "Like a lamb to the slaughter," Martha muttered. "Chin up, girl. Even lambs have teeth." Lena met her gaze in the mirror. "This lamb is learning how to be a wolf," she whispered. The ceremony was a brief, sterile affair in the sheriff's parlor. Her father looked frail and old. Gideon Cole stood tall and proud, a conquering king. The other conspirators, Abernathy and Pierce, were there, their faces smug. They weren't just witnessing a wedding, they were celebrating a merger. When the judge pronounced them man and wife, Cole's kiss wasn't passionate. It was an act of branding, hard and possessive. The polite applause sounded like dirt falling on a coffin. Lena moved through the celebration like a ghost, a polite smile fixed on her face, her mind a cold, calculating machine. She was now Mrs. Gideon Cole. She had a new name, a new position, and with that position came access. She was no longer an outsider. She was on the inside. That night, after the guests left, they were alone. "My wife," Cole said with deep satisfaction. He walked toward her, and she braced herself. But he didn't touch her. He just looked at her. "Take off the dress." It was an order. Her fingers fumbled with the buttons. The opulent gown pulled at her feet. "You are beautiful," he stated, like a man admiring a purchase. "But your beauty is not why I married you. I married you for your name. The Bishop name has legitimacy. Through you, I become part of this land, not just the man who enforces its laws." He began to pace, laying out his entire vision. The railroad, a smelter for the silver, turning redemption into the capital of the territory. He was revealing everything, not to a partner, but to a possession. Confident she was powerless. "The silver from the Coronado claim is just the beginning," he said, his eyes gleaming. "The vein on your father's land is 10 times richer. Once we are settled, I will make your father a generous offer to buy him out. He will take it, and the Bishop Ranch will belong to me, to us." He was laying all his cards on the table, certain she couldn't play against him. "You are my wife now, Lorena," he said, stopping in front of her. "Your loyalties are with me. There will be no more afternoon rides, no more secrets. You belong to me. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered. He led her not to the master bedroom, but to her own room. "This marriage is a business arrangement for now," he said. "A proper union will happen when I am satisfied of your absolute loyalty. Good night, Mrs. Cole." He closed the door. She heard the faint click of a key turning in the lock from the outside. She was a prisoner. The wedding hadn't saved her father. It had simply transferred the ownership of the cage to her. She sank onto the bed, the cold dread replaced by a slow-burning rage. He had underestimated her. He saw a beautiful doll. He didn't see the woman who met an Apache warrior in a secret canyon. He didn't see the woman who had held the proof of his crimes in her hands. He thought he had locked her in, but he had just given her the time and the motive to plan his complete and utter destruction. Locked in her room each night, Lena Cole became a strategist. By day, she played the part of the perfect, ornamental wife. Her meekness pleased Gideon, feeding his ego and lulling his suspicion. He had won. He saw no reason to look for threats from a conquered territory. But beneath the surface, Lena was weaving a web. Her first thread was Martha O'Malley. Lena made daily trips to the general store, stopping in Martha's saloon for a sarsaparilla and idle gossip. "The sheriff is so busy," Lena would sigh. "Meetings at all hours with Mr. Abernathy and Mr. Pierce." "Men like that don't plot, dear," Martha would reply in a low voice. "They scheme." Lena told Martha everything. Coronado Ventures, the geological map, the triumvirate of Cole, Abernathy, and Pierce. Martha, in turn, fed her information. "The miners at the Coronado claim are getting paid in company script, not cash," Martha reported. "They can only spend it at the company store, where prices are double. They're little more than slaves." But then Martha revealed something that changed the game. "My husband used to own the biggest stake in this valley," she said, her eyes hard as stone. "Before Cole arrived, the sheriff used a trumped-up claim and a stacked deck of laws to ruin him. My husband died a broken man. I've been waiting years for a weapon to use against Gideon Cole. And you, girl, you are it." Lena's second thread was Deputy Wade Garrett. He was a quiet, haunted man, loyal to Cole out of fear. But Lena had seen the conscience buried deep inside him. She started with kindness, offering him water, asking after his sick wife. She learned the doctor's bills were piling up. One day she stopped him on the porch. "It must be difficult," she said softly, "enforcing a law that sometimes feels harsher than it needs to be." She let the words hang in the air, a direct reference to the shooting of the young ranch hand. Garrett flinched. "The sheriff believes in order, ma'am." "I know," Lena said, "but I've seen the look in your eyes, Deputy. You believe in justice, and there is a difference." She had planted a seed of rebellion. Her most desperate move was getting a message to Kyle. She drew a crude map of the ranch marking the well. Next to it, she drew a symbol for silver in the initials GC. Then she drew a cage with a bird inside. It was a warning and a plea. She paid the livery owner's son a silver dollar to leave the message at a secret drop point. Weeks passed in agonizing silence. Cole's confidence grew. He began leaving her room unlocked at night, believing her spirit was finally broken. It was the gravest mistake of his life. The breaking point came like a thunderclap. A stubborn old prospector named Patterson found a small silver deposit on his own claim and refused to sell to Coronado Ventures. 2 days later, he was found dead at the bottom of a ravine. An accident, Sheriff Cole declared. That evening, Deputy Garrett came to the house. Lena overheard his raised voice from Cole's office. "It wasn't no accident, Gideon. He was shot. I saw the hole in his coat." "The report will say it was an accident." Cole's voice was ice. "The man was a drunk and a fool. He slipped." "But that ain't the truth." "The truth is what I say it is," Cole snarled. "Are you questioning me, Wade? You have a sick wife, a steady wage. Don't throw it all away for a dead man." A long silence. Then Garrett stormed out, his face pale and sick. He saw Lena standing there, and his carefully constructed walls crumbled. He knew he was now complicit in murder. He brushed past her and fled. Lena knew the time for whispering was over. That night, she crept into Cole's office. The drawer with the CV Holdings file was now unlocked. She took the partnership agreement. It was the one piece of irrefutable proof. As she slipped it into her dress, a sound from outside made her freeze. A low, mournful bird call, repeated 3 times. It was a signal. Kyle had received her message, and he was coming. The night air was electric. Kyle's signal was a promise of a storm. Lena knew a frontal assault would be a bloodbath, playing right into Cole's hands. She had to dismantle his power from within before the first arrow flew. Her target was Wade Garrett. She found him at the bottom of a whiskey bottle in Martha O'Malley's saloon. "You should be arresting a murderer," she said, sitting at his table. "You don't know what you're talking about," he growled. "I know an old man named Patterson was killed because he wouldn't sell his claim to Coronado Ventures," she said, leaning forward. "And I know who owns Coronado Ventures." She slid the partnership agreement across the table. Garrett stared at it, his face losing all color. The lie he'd been telling himself shattered. He was the paid enforcer for a conspiracy of thieves and murderers. "What do you want?" he whispered. "Justice," Lena answered. "The real kind." Her eyes flickered to Martha, who gave a slow nod. "Martha has spoken to the miners. They're being cheated, and they know it. They're scared of coal, but they're more scared of starving. They just need someone to lead them, someone with a badge." Before Garrett could answer, the night erupted, not with war cries, but with fire. The assay office, where the Coronado ore was weighed, was engulfed in flames. A diversion. Kyle wasn't attacking the town. He was attacking Cole's money. The town burst into chaos. Cole burst from his house, pistol in hand, bellowing for Garrett. This was the moment. Lena looked at the deputy. "Choose Wade right now. Do you protect his ledger books, or do you stand for the people he's been bleeding dry?" Garrett looked at the paper, then at Lena's unflinching face, and finally at the badge on his chest. A lifetime of suppressed decency rose to the surface. He stood up, no longer a drunk, but a lawman. As Cole organized a feudal bucket brigade, Garrett walked to the center of the street. "That's enough," he yelled. "You're all being robbed." He held up the partnership agreement. "Sheriff Cole, Banker Abernathy, and Pierce own Coronado Ventures. They're getting rich while you get nothing. Old man Patterson found out, and they had him killed." A stunned silence fell. Cole spun around, his face contorted with rage. He saw Lena standing on the saloon porch and understood everything. The demure wife, the quiet rides, it had all been an act. "You!" he roared, raising his pistol, not at Garrett, but at Lena. He never fired. An arrow, silent and swift, sprouted from his gun shoulder. He screamed, his pistol clattering to the dust. From the rooftops and alleys, a dozen Apache warriors emerged, led by Kyle. They were not there for a massacre. They were there to ensure the scales of justice were balanced. "Your reign is over, Cole," Garrett said, his own gun now drawn and steady. "You're under arrest for the murder of James Patterson." The miners, their fear finally eclipsed by anger, surged forward and surrounded Abernathy. The conspiracy was shattered. not by a gunfight, but by the truth. Cole, clutching his bloody arm, snarled at Lena. You think you've won? You've thrown your lot in with a savage. I offered you a civilized world. You offered me a prettier cage, Lena shot back. He offered me the sky. Kyle stepped forward, speaking not to Cole, but to the townspeople. We do not want your town. We want our land. We want the sacred ground you have desecrated to be returned. We want the thieves who murdered for silver to be punished by your law. Cornered and exposed, Gideon Cole made one last, desperate move. He didn't lunge for his gun. He let out a piercing whistle. On the roof of the hotel, a man with a rifle, a hidden sharpshooter, rose to his feet and took aim at Kyle. But before he could fire, a second arrow, this one from the shadows of a nearby alley, struck the rifleman. He tumbled from the roof without a sound. Kyle's people were always one step ahead. Defeated, Cole finally lunged for his fallen gun. Wade Garrett was faster. A single shot echoed through the night, clean and final. The Iron Sheriff of Redemption fell into the dust he had so long commanded. In the quiet aftermath, a new order began to settle over the town. Garrett took charge. The truth of Coronado Ventures came out. The assets were seized. Lena stood with Kyle as the sun began to rise, washing the smoke-filled sky with gold. Her father's ranch was safe, its future secured by her own courage. What now? She asked. Their worlds were still impossibly different. He took her hand. Now, he said, his dark eyes holding the promise of 1,000 sunrises. We build a bridge instead of a fence. Their path would not be easy, but for the first time, it would be their own, forged in the fire of a love that refused to be broken. Lena's journey from a pawn in a ruthless man's game to the architect of her own freedom reminds us that the strongest cages can be broken from the inside. Was her gamble worth the incredible risk? Could you have been as brave, placing a bet that big with your own life on the line? The Wild West was filled with countless untold stories like this one, tales of quiet heroism hidden in the dust and shadows of history. If Elena's fight for freedom moved you, please show your support. Hit that like button, share this story with someone who loves an epic tale of justice, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the untamed heart of the American West. Thanks for listening.